Okay, I guess we'll get started here. Um, Welcome to another Common Lisp study group. I'm Ram Vedam with Atlanta Functional Programming. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion on the CL-SDL2 library, in particular using the SDL2 kit library that we introduced in the later episode, or part of last episode. CL-SDL2, for folks who are just joining us, is a nice wrapper around the very popular simple direct media layer library, or SDL2 library, that's available for C. SDL2 kit adds to CL-SDL kind of like what Glut added to OpenGL. That is, it provides a an event loop, being able to manage multiple windows, managing the rendering loop for GL, amongst other things, as well as gives you some integration with some functionality for easy startup and exit. We were last time working on this example that I'm presenting you here in my Emax Buffer that is trying to attempt to create a screen that will, clear the screen to white to red, and we were having a little bit of trouble with the actual rendering of the red square. Hopefully that is going to be resolved today. I'm going through the documentation for folks who are looking at it. This is on the GitHub page for the SDL2 kit, which I posted as part of the description on this YouTube video. So let me first start up Emacs here, Sly here. Just give me a second. Now, I actually created a project for this, for our workshop that I called CL-SDL2 Workshop. Hopefully after today I will post this in its entirety on the AFP GitHub page for you guys to download. This will have all the functionality and all the code that I'm presenting to you today, as with many of our other projects. The folks who are looking at our AFP GitHub page now, you might see some projects from past episodes along with some common libraries that we developed along the way. Now, kind of reiterate SDL2 interaction. We're going to do the majority of our interaction through the SDL2 kit library, not through SDL directly, but we may end up using SDL2 functionality here and there. I might end up adding an additional stream for SDL2 specific things, because there are a couple of macros if you wanted to use SDL alone without using SDL2 kit. But my recommendation is if you're just starting out, or you're trying to write a game or trying to write an application, SDL2 tends to be a bit more lower level than SDL2 kit is kind of giving you. So it will be probably beneficial for you to leverage SDL2 kit wherever possible. There are other similar libraries like this that we may go on in the future. Now, as with anything, you need the first thing with rendering some computer graphics is to create the screen, as we mentioned last episode. And as a quick review, we created this display class, which is a subclass of kit SDL2 window. Now, to create a new window with OpenGL, you would want to go and switch this to GL window instead, and that will give you GL functionality. Right now, just for our purposes, we are just using the window um, object itself. We have two member functions of the member variables of this. One is the renderer that actually does the drawing, and is the refresh. The second one is the refresh rate. All Windows subclasses, according to the SCL2 kit documentation, must implement what they call the window protocol. Window protocol is about the base window protocol is really a couple of methods: the window event, mouse motion, text input, keyboard. And in addition, you want to write a render function and then the ability to close the window. You don't necessarily have to do all of these, but it is beneficial that, according to at least the documentation, that you must have some sort of specialization on them with respect to your particular window. You could try out. Actually, I think this is incorrect. It should be just implement. You should try out to see if the defaults work for you. If the defaults do not work for you, go ahead and overload it. And as with anything, your function will be most specific from the function that is currently there, following the specificity rules of class. So I'm going to go ahead and stub out a couple of things. Primarily, let's see, I think I got hit to that SDL keyboard event there. I may want, let's just go ahead and try that one for now. This one is, so this is something that I wanted to first check out, which is the, 1 second, folks. Just need to look up just this function signature. So, in order for us to override the SDL2 keyboard event, well, first let me just do this to get us in here, is we need to, as I mentioned, create a specialization on our display class with the state, timestamp, repeat, and keysim. Now, this function signature matches that to the keyboard event object that is present in the SCL2 library. So you can actually go and take a look at the actual SCL2 library to actually know what the what it is that is being passed into this function. In particular, of these uh, 4 parameters that are not being specialized, the main one that we're going to be looking into is the key sim event, which is the symbol that was pressed or released. So what we would do here is let's see here in this example. If we do any key that causes this, we're just going to call close window, because that itself is probably good enough. So undefine function. Hold on 1 second. I have to say kit. There we go. So let's see. If we start this guy, what happens? We create a screen. This screen is not showing up on. So I'm going to have to share my entire desktop. 1 second, folks. It looks like I will be unable, for folks who are watching on YouTube, I have some difficulty sharing my actual desktop on Mac for you guys to see. I will. Let me see. Maybe this might work. Nope, that won't work. And do this. And I will resolve that and probably give you guys a separate video on the output of this later on. Let's get back to the code here. And let me share. Actually, that might be a better way of doing this. Let me share instead my Hangout video call. Okay. Switch over to Hangouts here. Let me share my actual desktop and switch over to Emax. Let's click this guy here. Can the folks on the call see my Emax buffer?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure because looks like there's a lag in the YouTube stream, and I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? This should be working.
There was a really bad lag last week.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's going on there. But hopefully at some point it'll sync up to my Emacs buffer. Okay, so let's go back to this one thing here. This should be regardless of keyboard event registered closing window. Yeah, that's because, let me hide the status bar because I don't want that. Okay. Quick load my workshop code. Okay. And let's see here now. Let's see if this pops up. Calling making display. Okay, so no button is being registered. No key press is being registered. That's a problem. Do I have to make this an around method? This might be the issue. An after call. We created the display. We set the display to be. That's right. Me and Michael tried something last week and I forgot to clean this up. This should technically be. Okay, that should be true. And let's see here. We are making the display. We're using a keysim. If This needs to be before anything else. I'm just right now spitballing here because the documentation on how to deal with the keyboard event is a little bit lacking in terms of whether or not a keyboard event should be registered as uh, a before event or an after event. So I'm extrapolating based on some examples I found on the the SDL2 kit GitHub page. It is there we go. That is it. Got it. Let's start. It is an after method. Now, what I'll do is I'll do this. Put this. In here, do this. Let's get the scan code of this guy, and we're going to use SDL2 here to grab the scan code from every keysim object has three things from the SDL library: the key code, the modifier, whether it's been pressed or released, and I'm sorry, the modifier is whether it's a special key, like if it's a control or a shift or alt and so forth. And then the scan code itself. The scan code is some translation that to like some key name that you could then easily refer to. All this is in the SDL2 documentation, so I'm just kind of like switching back and forth between different things so that I don't mess things up as I'm going through here. Right. So what we do is we grab the scan code from the keysim. That's our again the the structure that will tell us what key was actually pressed. Then what we'll do is we'll close on when we get an escape scan code from oops, sorry, I forgot to reload since my thing crashed last time. Okay. Wait a second. Load. Then go and compile this guy. Just go ahead and compile the entire thing once. Try running it. Create a display. It is still not for the. Let me click on this guy. It is not registering my key presses for some reason. Is there something else I need to do? So let us, instead of trying to use normal window like Michael suggested last time, let us try using the GL window. And if the GL window works, then it might be possible that there's a bug in some of the registrations of some of the generic window methods. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sure, everything's loaded. Go. And let's see here. Let's start this. See if this works now. Nope. For some reason the key presses is not being registered here. Let's create a render. Okay, there is one more thing. It looks like all these are after methods that I have to make all this an after method. Yeah, the reason why, if folks are wondering why I'm constantly restarting my REPL here, is the event loop, since it's not registering my my key presses, it's going into an infinite loop, and common Lisp locks up when it's hooking between SDL2 specifically. And I think it may be because of how I registered some of the object functions that are there. It's not communicating correctly with Sly. So
Question.
what?
With SBCL, don't you have to do it on a different thread?
My understanding is SDL2 behind the scenes. Well, CL-SDL2 behind the scenes with SDL2 kit will create, or at least I thought it would create uh, a separate thread. It will fork off a separate thread in order for it to handle that for me. So this code right here, if you see this make display with the idle render here, this is setting it up so that when we actually do kit SDL2 start, that should start it in a separate thread. But maybe I might be wrong there.
I remember there was a long time ago when Jace was on mentioning when we were doing this kind of stuff that you had, once you're working with the REPL, you had to do it with a separate thread or something, or you had to attach it to the main thread or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe I will look into that, and if that's the case, I'll update this code and then post it up. But I had thought, ooh, maybe it's this that's causing the issue. SDL2 in main thread that's doing the display. Let's see, maybe there's a different function there that that I have to use in order to actually render it. Because if that's the case, if it's really just a switch over, that would be much easier for me. Let's see. Wait, I have to load up to get. Okay. Let's see here. In key. Ah, here we go. Let's see if this works. I'm pretty sure that I might be botching up something here, but I could be wrong. That alone. Oops, sorry. I'm not in my package. There we go. And to be on the safe side. Hopefully it doesn't kill. Nope, it killed my. It opened it up in a separate thread, alright, but it still locked it up. I'll figure that out. That's probably just me doing something dumb. We'll see. Okay. Let's go back to this render function here. I need to, after this guy, after method, the window event is an after method. Let's do this. You might be using the wrong event, so let's switch this over to writing an after method for kit SDL2 text input event, which is another option that we have here. After, let's specialize on our display, and we get the TS and the text. If you guys want to know what that is, the text input event is again another event that's part of SDL2. The options that you're looking there at is the text that was actually passed in, the timestamp, and the actual window object. So here, since we want to grab the window, we want to quit when we hit Q. We'll just go and say Q, and let's do this Q to make things easier, and then do string uppercase text. One second. Yeah, that's right. And then we'll call again kit L2 close window on the window. See if nope, it still doesn't. For some reason, my system is not showing this. Is this running in the background? It is running in the background. Let's see here. Oh, right, sorry, wrong window. So it is now running in the background. But it is not actually setting up anything. Let's see one more time. This very well could be an issue with using SDL2 on Mac, which I hadn't even thought about until just now. But it should. I mean, I've used SDL2 in the past on Mac using C++, so I don't believe that it's the case with it, but who knows. Maybe it's examples, create a window, create the window, we send the text input, did string uppercase on it. We set the idle window, make the display. And we do, what do we call clear screen exactly? Ah, we're setting up the display. We created the render method, registered the render method, we registered clearing it, registered the round method to close it, we registered the keyboard event and the textbook event. What else am I missing here? I'm wondering. You know what? This should be sorry, wrong. My buffer has it. It's like catching up with my typing. Wondering if I have to just make all these into, sort of following some of the other things. These into all special methods that are executed at once. let's go ahead and change this guy back to, for the time being. Okay. Nope, it's not catching up on it. I've done this with, let's see what the other one was. It was within it, I think it was. Let me try something here. Let me see if this works with, if I create a simple function called, now I've done this way before, and we could probably go from there if this works, instead of trying to set this up. Okay. Oh, that's working. I'm going to make this. Make dumb window. Now in SDL itself, and this is probably why I'm not as familiar with SDL2 kit, but I have played around with SDL2 in the past because it matches the same API, or at least the guys who wrote CL-SDL2 attempt to match has close to the same API as CL-SDL. And we have this nice little wrapper function that will take in some flags that you could specify here.
Question.
What?
What's the difference between the three? CL, SDL, SDL2, and SDL kit.
Okay, so CL-SDL was the original wrapper around the simple direct media layer. That's SDL1, right? Around 1.2 or 1.3 of SDL on the C side, they did a re-architecture and it was a breaking API compatible change. So they split the two between SDL1, 2, and SDL2. So because of that breaking API change that they made in SDL, CL-SDL was no longer able to like grow beyond a certain point. So they had to make a separate project with it, but they tried to move a good portion of the API to fit the same paradigm that they already adopted that people liked from CL-SDL. But SDL2 and CL-SDL, and I'm talking about CL-SDL2 and CL-SDL, they're both just like their C libraries are. They're very thin wrappers around the library, so you're basically getting the full API as it stands with CLSD. It's as if you're writing the C version, except with Lisp syntax. Okay, so you're using the C library with Lisp syntax if you're using CL-SDL or CL-SDL2. They've added a couple of things for resource management, and things like if you want to handle a window handle, but you don't want to manually free it on the C side. They wrote with macros to do that resource management for you. That's what I'm using here. What SDL2 Kit provides on top of this is additional functionality, like there are certain window management functions that you just have to be able to handle that aren't in a proper class style object that SDL2 Kit provides in the window object. It created the generic functions that you could use to simply hook into ultimately a generalized game loop for or graphics loop for rendering. That's what I've been having a little trouble with, because there is you could specialize on any of these methods that I showed earlier. Window event, mouse button, mouse motion, text input, keyboard. You can register other events as well that are specialized for your window object, and the basic render functions. In reality, there should only be two functions that you need to deal with, which is render and close window.
So SDL2 kit is a superset of CL-SDL2.
That's correct.
Cool.
It adds additional functionality to make it more Lispy. You know what? Let's just do this. I don't need this right now. Okay. So now what I could do is I could just simply do, if I remember correctly, right in main thread. We still have to use that background T. SDL2. So you have to add a bunch of like all these like key stuff that you have to specify. Method is going to be polling, because we're waiting for things. Let's say that we do key down, so immediately on key sim. So what we're doing is we're grabbing the key sim object. We're gonna try and find what the scan code is using SDL scan code like we did earlier. Do I need the value, or do I need just simply what I did earlier? Yeah, I just think I need that. Key sim. And what we're going to just simply do is format T. Can I simply do this? I doubt I'll be able to do this, but we will see. Scan code. So we just know what the let's do this. SDL2 colon you know what? Let's go ahead and grab that. This way we could just do this. Value SDL2 scan code value on the key sim. Okay. And you don't need this guy. So that's what this guy is doing for key down. Oops. key up, what we want to know is, and this is as if it's being pressed, so you have to follow both key down and key up. Key sim. Oops, did I say that twice? Yes, I did. Key sim. Right. Then we could grab the scan code before, like we did. Scan code. CL2 scan code. Key sim. And when, and we could do the same thing that we did before. When EQ scan code, escape scan code, we could just quit. That's going to be, I think. Oh yes.
Could you check what's actually being shown on the YouTube? Because it's been blank for a while.
Oh shoot. Okay, then this is. I thought it would correct itself, but I didn't notice that. Let me try this again. Dang it! Stop! So if I could share. It looks like it's not liking for me to share my desktop. It's not liking.
The last 36 minutes are blank.
That's bad. Let me do this. Okay. Guys, we're on YouTube. I'm going to show you my code, and then I'm going to try and create a separate video with the output, because it looks like I'm having difficulties sharing the output of my desktop as I do this. So let's see if this works. Can you see my screen? Come on. Huh. Okay. That's weird. I don't know why only the whole window handle is working, but the desktop won't get screened over.
Hangouts is fine at the moment. It might be the delay for YouTube at the moment.
It's showing at least. It was showing for like a few seconds, and then they purposefully well, we'll see. It looks like it's showing up right now. I'll keep an eye on it. I didn't see it when I was doing this this test before, but can we do this? Scan code? Okay, maybe. Hold on. It blanked out again, but I think there might be just a delay on that. Okay. Give me a second. I could rectify this. I'm going to switch it over to my Emax Buffer permanently here. And that should fix that. This might be a problem with OBS, Richard. OBS is streaming from my laptop to YouTube as a third party, and OBS might just not like the fact that I'm trying to get the full resolution of my laptop. It might be having some difficulty there. But okay. Looks like now we're back in business. I will crop, I guess, the video for the last 36 minutes and show you guys what I've done here. Okay, so this key down and key up thing is basically, just so that we could record, some keys available in our event loop. What I'm trying to do is basically I am adding a couple of things for just printing out generally, like we're quitting the program, things like this, so that we could see it and folks can actually see it on the chat on the YouTube channel, because they won't be able to see my screen, and I think you guys won't be able to see now my my window handling code. But let's try this and see if it all works. Then the final thing you have to do is so one of the things that was handled by SDL2 kit that I'm showing you kind of the lower level on how it would be working is it handles the window lifecycle. Okay, it would be handling how it closes, how it opens, how you do resizes, and all this. Okay, you would have to do a lot of that kind of boilerplate when you're using SDL2, using CL-SDL2 specifically yourself. Now we have some conveniences in the with macros, specifically with window, with event loop. There's a bunch of other ones if you really want to like take a look into it. But in general, you could clearly see that this could get particularly unwieldy. Now you could obviously break this up into a couple of functions that you could then, just delegate to, but it's still going to be quite a bit of boilerplate code that you're going to end up having to write, that by having those generic functions available to you and registered as part of the event loop, a lot of that was supposed to be taking care of you, but we were having some trouble with that earlier. The final thing that I'm going to show you here to complete this basic example is when we want to escape the program and quit the program, we need to actually explicitly put a quit event in to quit out of the window. Now, I thought that I could just simply do quit, but this may not work. I don't think. I think it's actually a keyword that's in the main library. I just can't seem to see it exported for some reason. Let's see. Yeah, it is SDL2 kit. SDL2 :quit is exported. So if this goes well, two undefined variables, keys and quit. Let's see what did I miss here. Keys. Oh, I forgot to do one more thing here. this entire thing, this width window, has to be within a width init, because you have to initialize the entire SDL system with what you want. SDL2 with init colon everything, because I don't want to think about the control right now. The width init macro takes a bunch of different options. I'm forgetting what most of those init flags are available to you in the SDL2 documentation. So if there's something specific that you want to, in terms of reducing the number of things that are loaded or initialized, go ahead and look at that documentation for right now. It is undefined. This is defined. How do not load this up? Let me do this again. Let me do this. I don't like doing this, but we will see. Okay, I botched encode. Okay, I botched up my image again. There we go. No warnings. Looks like I'm good. Make a dumb window. So I may have forgotten to add a couple of things in terms of showing it. So I can't actually interact with the window. Yeah, I forgot to add. Oops. I'm gonna have to quit this guy and kill. I forgot to add a there's one more thing I forgot to add, which is actually showing the window. And it should have actually showed it. Let's see here. Did I forget to? Let's see. Yeah, I forgot to show the dang window. Oh, here's a couple of things that I forgot to do too as well, which is let's add a set window width, I think it is. Basic window set as I think it's going to be set window size. Oh, I can actually specify all this in the, forgot about this. Key, title, basic window, position, let's put it in. Yeah, so what I was doing earlier was kind of the manual approach, but I forgot that they actually incorporated this in with the window. So this comes up with all the flags, the title, the initial position that you want, which I guess I will put at 320. Oh, not that. That's too big. Y240. Let's make the width to be actually, let's make this 160 by 120. Make this 320 by 240. And is there anything else that I need to? No. 240. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. I forget to also clear the window. I may have. That's what I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one more time. I forgot to add an actual thing to handle the quit. That's a rookie mistake. Okay. This takes in no arguments and it just returns true. And let's finish this off. I want to be able to at least show the window. I'm going to do this. in here because I'm not exporting it. Other thing am I missing? Created the key events. I created the idle events. Clear up. Yeah, it's locked up again. Let's see here. There must be something I am missing. I'm picking this up as I go along. This is as much as I knew, and this used to work with CL-SDL, but this new CL-SDL2 is the one that I'm not as familiar with. So, folks wondering what I'm doing is I'm kind of like switching between different things. I was like, I know this worked in Lisp Builder. I have an example of this in Lisp Builder using CL-SDL. How does this work in CL-SDL2? So, please forgive me. It's a little bit of a learning process that we're going through together. Wasn't it in it? In main thread, we need to do make this thread main. We don't need to care about import from. We don't need that. We don't need to worry about that. Position centered. That's fine. There is a way for everything in the package, but I don't remember what it does. Package. Instead of with the window, let's do with We don't need with everything, we just need with window. We need see something here. Let's try this. It all worked, but so you know what the reason is I'm not actually doing this correctly. So we show the window, we should be able to clear it. Oh, that's the problem. I may have been trying to deal with this in using their 2D features, then a lot of this stuff was adjusted for the 3D stuff. Let's see if I could grab something from the actual project here. CL-SDL2. Right, so I'm going to have to do this. I'm turned on with everything. So let's see if we can do this. So this is trying to basically fill in a rectangle. And let's make this 640 by 480 and do that. Actually, we don't even need to specify that. That's defaults. Oops. Yeah, that's right. We don't need to open up everything. Since we're just creating a simple SDL2 function, there is no reason for us to do that. And it says delay might be unknown. Let's see this. That means I'm missing something here. Oh, right. I'm missing the delay function. Let's say that we just do this. Sorry. Variable win. That's it. Window. See if that pops up. Yes, it popped up. I'm back to where I was before, where I need to actually is background nil. See that. Load. Okay, so what is the arguments for this guy again? No event. No event is nil. Just double check to make sure that that can do that. This was in main thread. This was in main thread, which is defined here. this should actually be done in the idle. I'm not mistaken. Yeah, in the idle. Because this is in the event loop. See if this shows up. This is showing. This is locked up again. Dang it. This can stay here, but we still need an idle event. Let me do this. Let's grab this and make a function called draw. Specify this here. Draw window. Compile this guy. Call this guy. And do this. Isn't it event loop background method method timeout recursive body event handlers. Timeout. I'm gonna put 30. See what happens here. Ooh, that looks a little better. So do this. I think I have to do just this. It's not liking the fact that I am specifying something here. Let me deal with all the defaults and see what happens. So what I'm doing is I'm restructuring my code a little bit so that I can add potentially other things to this loop. Oh, I forgot to recompile this. Now I can okay. And let's see. Let me do this. Usually it's not a good idea to use progen, but right now I'm just structuring my code a little bit because it's sequential in this case. It's going to be, so I want to print. And like we did before, I don't think I need to specify all this. And It's checking for events. It's doing key down event and the key up event. See what happens here. Actually, before I do that, this really should be at the very end. See here, it should be like a sideboard. Is what is missing here? Because this should be working the way it intended, but there seems to be something that's going on with things. Might be right that we have to run this in a separate loop, but I'm under the impression that this would already do that. Let me go and look in the documentation for must have missed something in how we're doing the in main thread. I may have that out in the wrong way. Let's see here. So we may not need this. That's probably what's causing the issue. Let me restart my this might be it. That is not working. Still not able to register keyboard events. Why is that the case? That is a problem. What am I missing here? So you guys may not be able to see this right now. I could try and see if I could share this to you so you could see this, but I'm actually getting a proper, I improved at least the program because I'm able to actually see a red screen here, and I could show this to you, hopefully. This way you'll see that I'm not kidding, but Richie, the one thing that's missing is the fact that it's not registering the actual keyboard events, which is what I'm trying to work through right now.
I didn't realize I'm the last one left, but it's getting close to my bedtime.
Oh yeah, I apologize. I mean, it's it's getting. I mean, this has just been really interesting. I mean, it's reminding me a lot of stuff that I've forgotten on SDL. Like, ah, crap, that's right. There's a window surface that I have to deal with, or this and that. So it's just. And since I worked with the earlier versions of CL-SDL, I'm using the wrong API, and that's kind of messing me up. So, but yes.
Just a hint: it would be good to have your timestamp in your mode line on Emax. That way, you can see what the time difference or time lag is between YouTube and you.
That's actually a great idea. How do you do that now?
I'll have to look that up.
Okay.
I know you're using SpaceMax, but I saw regular Emax.
Yeah, it's not regular Emacs, but I think I could still use the Emacs commands to hook it up, and I could just set it up in my Emax Buffer. There's a function in my in the Emacs configuration that allows me to pass in regular Emacs Lisp commands. So I could set that up if you just let me know what the setting is. I could totally do that. That's a good idea. But let me show you what I have here. So hopefully you can see this. Do you see? Oh wait, did I forget to compile? Yeah, I did forget to compile because I just restarted. 1 second. Compile draw window. Compile dumb window. You see the red screen in the middle of my desktop?
Yep.
Sweet. Okay. So this event loop is running, it is polling, but it doesn't seem to be registering any sort of like keyboard presses that I'm doing. It's it's hysterical. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like I it doesn't make any sense because so either um it's locked up, like the Lisp image is locked up after it drew this, because I've forgotten like something behind the scenes to actually say, oh, run this in a background thread. Actually, let me turn that on. Maybe that might be the thing, like you said before. This is going to be like the last thing I'm going to try, because originally I had it in the in main thread, but I didn't need the in main thread necessarily if you follow just normal SDL, because the with init and with window hooking into the event loop will allow you to start gaining like events from the code. And this guy actually should be one of the arguments. Oh, right. I have to go and restart SVCL. Okay. This guy has a background T method that should loop. You would think that it would loop, but I have no idea if it will. Let's see that again. There we go. And nothing's getting registered, even though it's running in the background thread. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, it's like I have to go and look at the library to see what it is that that I'm not registering in the low level library. But because if you look at a lot of the tutorials, and I'm gonna post this on in the YouTube description, especially for folks who are watching. There is a series of tutorials available by Tatrix, which is a port of the LazyFoo SDL tutorials that a lot of this code and even the examples that are in Lisp games are kind of inspired off of. And the code that I'm just showing you right now is is almost a complete adaptation of that code. Like I just made some small adjustments here and there for drawing and making things a little bit easier for folks to know what bits and pieces are. But he drew all this in the same function, and he wrote. You might see in his code some things like some macros that he wrote for the with init like pattern. This is the standard pattern that you would do for window management. You initialize SDL, and then you initialize a window, and then the rest is you grabbing a window service and doing drawing on it. I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary there, so it must be some missing configuration in the initialization of SBCL talking to SDL that I'm not doing right. So I'd have to go and debug that.
Compiling it and running it separately outside of the REPL?
I would have to compile it right now. I don't think I set that up so I can try running it outside of the REPL.
Just in case the whole main SPL thread thing might be messing it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll compile a FASL and see if that works. Maybe even a ROS file just so that I could get an executable out of it. And then see if that works. And if that does, then that answers that question. That means I'm not hooking in. It means that this background key isn't doing what I think it's doing. I would think that me specifying that the event loop is running in the background means that it's running in its own thread of execution. but that might be wrong. That might be like background buffering. Who knows? I don't know. You have to go and look at how that's hooked into the STL event loop. This event loop macro is actually just doing nothing more than going through and calling the poll event from the SDL library, and that it adds a couple of other things to it. But what one of the main things I thought that it added was this guy. This is actually a Lisp thing. I think this is not related to the SDL library, and it's related to whether or not we're running this event loop in the background or not. But I'll still debug it through it. Sorry, folks who are watching. I didn't realize that it was 140, but this was a real detailed thing, coding session, pretty intense one. Next week, I will continue this, but I think actually no. Next week we have a guest speaker. When I get more details from Michael Fiano regarding this guest speaker, I will post it on Functional Programming Slack, as well as Discord for folks who are on there in the news channel. Apologies again for folks who are going through this, and I'm sorry for folks on YouTube regarding the technical difficulties. I had not realized while I was very intensely looking at my Emax buffer that the YouTube live stream was blackened. I will try and redo parts of the stream again later on, time permitting, and get a new version up, hopefully with working code too, so that you guys can take a look at it. So until next week, thanks a lot. Thank you, Richie. Apologize for the late difference. And I'll talk to you next week.
Take care, man. Enjoy your week.
You too. Have a great weekend.